Welcome to the Caribbean Insight Magazine, your number one contemporary online publication in the Caribbean. Dive into the veiled corners of our region from the voices of the diaspora when you read our magazine. Find a place to shop all things Caribbean at our newly launched e-commerce store. Join the conversation at our latest webinar series. For more information, visit mycaribbeaninsight.com today or give us a call at 723-8102.
Good day, everyone. Welcome to this third installment of this webinar series, Health and Wellness in Caribbean Youth. It is brought to you by Caribbean Insight Magazine, your online resource to keep and connect the cultures throughout the Caribbean. Our sponsor for today's show is Green on the Go for your raw vegetable and fruit juices and fruit cups. They deliver anywhere in Trinidad, healthy right where you are. Today's topic, we'll be discussing mental health as it pertains to Caribbean health in youth, but also in general. And for this topic, we have three speakers. We have Robin Edwards, who I will allow to not only introduce herself, but tell us a little bit about her definition or her understanding of mental health. Robin, take it away.
Oh, hi everybody. Good Sunday evening. I am a speech therapist or a speech and language pathologist. Basically, the area that I work in is predominantly pediatrics. I work with kids. I did wonder when I first got the invitation to be on this panel, I was like, speech therapy, mental health, like as I'm sure most of you all are wondering, like how do those two worlds connect? The more I thought about it though, the more I realized that they do actually connect quite profoundly. So I guess this evening I'm here to really talk about the effect or the effect that mental health has on many of our young people with language learning disabilities, with autism, with Down syndrome. I think they're an underrepresented community. They are not a community that you expect. You know, their initial diagnosis is so large that you don't look towards the mental health aspects, but there are many. It's profound. So yeah, that's just a little bit of what I would like to touch on this evening.
Excellent. I appreciate that introduction to that because just as you were wondering, I'm sure the viewing public would also be wondering. And as we explore it further, I know that you will really illuminate this topic. So I can't wait for that. Next on our panel, we have Veera Bajan. Veera, without further ado, introduce yourself, let the people know what you're about.
Hi, good afternoon everyone, and thank you guys for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here and share with you all. So I'll just give a brief introduction of my area of expertise. I'm an attorney by profession, but I've been practicing yoga for a number of years, in fact since I was a teenager. Really for the sole purpose of maintaining my flexibility and mobility, Having been born without arms, I use my feet basically as a replacement for my arms. And I've used yoga for a number of years to ensure that I maintain a healthy physical well-being. Over time, my practice has evolved, and I was able to experience a lot of benefits in terms of my mental and spiritual well-being as well, which I believe is more important for me now in terms of my practice and how it has changed over the years. As a result of the immense benefits that I've experienced thus far from my practice, I decided last year to engage in yoga teacher training, which I did, and I would have completed my 200-hour training. And this year, I opened a yoga studio. So I'm the founder of a studio. It's known as the Yogi Within TT, which has been in operation for approximately 8 months. And I've run classes in studio as well as online. These classes are really, the purpose of these classes and the mission and the goal of the classes is really to enhance person's physical, mental, and spiritual well-being. And so today, my purpose here is really to discuss the effects and the benefits of yoga on one's mental well-being. Of course, I'll speak generally, but I know that the focus would really be on the effects and the benefits of yoga on one's mind and the ability to calm one's mind and ease symptoms of anxiety, stress, and so on. So I'm hoping to share with you all my personal experience as well as my experience in teaching yoga thus
far. Wow. Instant inspiration. I mean, you know, we talk about this generation. I mean, people make it generation after generation. We hear folks talk about, you know, instant this and instant that. But Vera, your knack for continuing and for persevering and to accomplish so much despite what persons might consider disabilities, but you are the true example and epitome of different ability and actually making yourself a beacon of encouragement for others. I am amazed. I really am. And thank you for that introduction. Next, I would like to go to a familiar face for those of you who've seen previous installments, Fadwa Abdul Ghafoor, which I love to say, she knows this, the roll of the tongue when I say that name. Fadwa, please introduce yourself. Let us know more about mental health from your perspective.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me back again on this panel. I mean, the last two discussions were really awesome, and I'm really happy to be here to be discussing the aspect of nutrition and mental health. Most people don't recognize that both actually go hand in hand. And there is this thing called the gut-brain connection, which has a lot to do with the way our body processes certain hormones and the way that we ourselves interact with the world based on our emotional states. So I am here to shed some light as to really how our diet impacts our mental health, especially as young people in the Caribbean, because there has been a rise and an increase on, you know, mental health issues, especially at this time. I also do work with women who have endometriosis, and we have embarked upon discussing mental health as it occurs with the disorder. So I'm really happy to be here to join this panel. I mean, we have awesome experts here this evening, and I know that we'll merge everything together quite nicely like a pillow. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
And of course, we are absolutely thrilled to have you here and everyone else. I mean, this topic, as I was saying off air, is such a wide, massive, underestimated, yet delicate topic, you know. So as we go through, I would encourage the viewing public to have an open mind. You know, what we are doing here is we're really trying to explore areas that I think a lot of persons in society may either consider taboo or consider too sensitive. So as we explore it, bear with us. Feel free to have any questions. Place it in the chat. right? You can write your question so that way you won't forget it and we'll always have access to it. And so as we continue, I'd like to go back to Robin, right? A speech pathologist. I think a lot of persons would like you to explore, you know, in terms of mental health, how this connects in a little bit of depth. Can you, you know, enlighten us?
Sure. So, okay, I am not a mental health professional. I work very hard to refer my clients, refer my families to mental health professionals. So I just want to kind of offer that as a qualifying statement. Really, why I am here is to raise awareness of the role that mental health plays in many of the disabilities, the diagnoses that I do work with. So, like, for example, people with a language or learning disability, what is it here? There's something like 54% of people with a language learning disability also have a co-occurring diagnosis of a mental health diagnosis. So that's significant, right? And I think so, like, another statistic that I have here is something like 28% or 20% of people who are diagnosed with autism have a co-occurring diagnosis of anxiety, right? These are important, you know. Like I said when I first started talking, or when I introduced myself, we can get so caught up in the initial or the primary diagnosis of, say, autism, that we don't look past that to actually see that this person is not just struggling or living with, surviving, thriving with autism. They're also dealing with human issues like mental health, you know. Sometimes the root of it is, maybe it's a lack of connection. Maybe it is that the way they process the world, the sensory processing that they experience is different than it is for a neurotypical person. So that's something that needs to be acknowledged. It needs to be dug into. You know, it needs to be worked on, you know, because it can be worked on. I mean, what Vera said, like yoga, you know, there are a lot of techniques that can be applied. So, yeah.
Excellent point. Excellent point. And as you were saying it, I was wondering, you know, simply off the bat, just I'll go off on a limb and I'll say, how much stress on a mind does it, you know, pay to be dealing with, as you said, the combinations, the correlation between, say, autism and anxiety or other various combinations, you know. So really and truly, on top of dealing with one issue, you know, some people might look at it as one issue, it's usually layered, right? So I guess you really do need to understand a lot of ways to control your mind and to seek that calmness. And so that's how I'll move forward by asking Vera, in your eyes, based on your experiences with yoga, you know, you could go from your own perspective, how has the practices or the breathing in yoga really assisted in mental clarity or any other area of positive mental health?
I think what I would begin by saying, and I can speak from my own personal experience, is that what yoga did for me personally is that it creates awareness, first and foremost. So when you are on the mat, you are in a posture, you're not engaged in a fancy triangular pose or any type of pose. It's not simply about holding up your body in a flexi bendy position. As many people may think, it's about stretching, and that's the sole, you know, purpose of yoga. But when you are actually in the practice and you hold a posture, you fully engage in your breath. So your breath becomes your anchor, your breath becomes the portal by which you go within yourself. So it's more than just how do I look in this pose? Do I look like the person who is next to me, or am I doing it right? It's more about how do I feel in this moment by fully engaging in my breath and taking my awareness inward to a place that is beyond my body, that is beyond my monkey mind, to a very, very sacred silent space within you, which your breath allows you to go to. So when you hold this posture and you engage fully in your breath, you actually send a signal to your brain to become calm, because you engage now in full, complete, deep breathing. When you engage in deep breathing, you slow down your heart rate. You begin to calm and relax your mind, and you are able to choose your stress response, so to speak. Because of course you're in a stressful position because you're holding this difficult position that you're in. But in a real life situation, when we are in a stressful position, our breath tends to be very shallow. Our heart rate speeds up. We choose our sympathetic response in that we choose fight or flight immediately. We begin to sweat. The brain begins the mind begins to become so activated, and our entire body literally begins to react to this stressful situation, which is in a sense what anxiety is, right? So when you're in the posture and you're in a yoga practice, you can actually take those lessons and you begin now to take it outside of the mat, so that when you're in a stressful situation, at least from my personal experience, I begin to engage in my breath. I create awareness within my body. I begin to observe my mind, the voice in my head, and what it might be saying about the situation, about this person, which is exactly what you do during a yoga practice. It's really just about creating awareness and using your breath to create oneness within yourself.
Excellently stated again. That's so enlightening, because some of it I actually can't wait to go further and explore, because you spoke about the fight or flight,
right.
the sympathetic nervous system response. A lot of these things I think the average person may or may not be fully aware of. And the awareness is very important to have an effective control over self,
Of course.
So I mean that's crucial information there. And then once we're speaking about crucial information, we also have to think about what we put in our bodies outside of oxygen, right? Like food, right? So Fadwa, please engage.
Yes. So I just want to piggyback on what Vera was speaking about pertaining to, the fight or flight way that we interact with the world. Because honestly, each one of us walking around very tense. We have to admit we are tense. We are a tense people. We are a tense nation. Our bodies and every single cell of our bodies hold on to this tension, this stress. If we go through some trauma, if we go through some stress, a stressful situation at work, and we don't de-stress, it holds on. Our cells hold on to that. When it holds on to this now, our cells tend to be malnourished. It tends to change. So it even impacts our digestive system. Most people don't know that 80% of our hormones is created in the gut. Our gut microbiome makes 80% of the hormones that regulate our bodies. Serotonin, dopamine, the nice hormone that is released when you see somebody you love, oxytocin, and you eat a piece of chocolate, you're going off in a tangent, you're in heaven. All these things are released by these little microbiome in your gut. But if we don't treat them well, they won't be nice to us. So when we decide, as young people, we think we're young and our body's strong, we need to prepare for later in life when you reach down to age like mine and going further, and you start to feel the feelings, your stomach not treating you right when you eat certain things. And so you have to treat your body well. You have to start eating healthy, forget all the snacks. We love the conkers, the fried foods, the oil. Once it's dripping in oil, it is the right thing. If it's not dripping in plenty oil and smothered with ketchup and mayo, it's not right. But the reality is it's not feeding the healthy microbiome in the gut that's going to make all these nice, happy hormones that have you skipping through the tulips, smelling the roses and these kind of things. So we have to be mindful of what we eat, the food choices we make, and how we protect the microbiome, because we are also in a society that loves to take medication. Yeah, bounce your toe today, you see a little swelling on it, you go on by the doctor, you get some antibiotics. These antibiotics don't know good from bad bacteria, everybody gone. So what can you do in that stead after you finish taking the course of antibiotics? What can you do to replace those microbiome that may cause a disruption in your hormonal balance? So I'll stop there for now, because I know Jamal have some questions coming.
Heavy, hitting heavy, like a heavyweight. that's, oh my goodness. You all know just how to get this conversation started, boy. Because, I mean, the hormones, if people only knew how important these things were, but I guess the public or persons who not really invested in health in a academic way would basically scroll over some of that information on their Google feed or their YouTube feed, you know, and it wouldn't really mean much to them. So I guess in a sense, our responsibility when we have this information is to really bring it to persons, lay persons and others, in not only an informative way, but also in a form of expression that they could, you know, assimilate and absorb it. Because I would say that if you ask the average person, Robin, about speech pathology, they may not even be able to define it, much less understand what it deals with, much less, I mean, you know, so many different areas. So I guess in a sense, we have to use the information that we have, the information that we get, and as effectively as possible, as skillfully as possible, based on our limited skill sets, bring it to persons. So I guess in that range, I would like to possibly ask you, Robin, to explore not necessarily just in mental health, but speech pathology in some of your experiences. So that way, probably viewers could get a strong idea of what your experiences are and how you're able to see the differences. So for example, if you say persons might eat a certain way when they have certain disabilities or whatnot. So right. Please share more.
So yeah, you know, it's very interesting. I mean, and I think as separate as each of us today, you know, myself, Vera, and Fadwa seem, everything, you know, Jamal, when I was talking to you, we were preparing for this, you know, we talked a lot about this, that people are like this ball of yarn that you can start to pull one thing apart, but it leads to everything else. And really, the connectedness of a person, far less the connectedness of a community, is so essential, you know. Okay, so speech therapy, I think it's a very limited title for what it is we do. We have quite a broad scope of practice. I work with patients from 0 years old. I don't do it, but there are speech therapists that would see infants in like the neonatal units, all the way up to 100. So basically we work with infants, pediatrics, adults, and then the geriatric population. And the range of diagnoses, the areas that we work in are also very broad. If I had to categorize them, I would break it into, I guess, let's say 3 main areas. We have speech, which refers to what I'm doing right now. That's articulation. That's my voice. That's the fact that I'm speaking fluently. I'm not stuttering. Um, all of that stuff would be under the category of speech. So voice is like, if you know somebody that talks like this, that would be a voice disorder. Stuttering is, or disfluency, I think everybody kind of knows what that is. And then articulation refers to when people don't make all their sounds clearly. So maybe they have a lisp, you know, or something else. And then we go into the second category, which is our language disorders. And that refers more to like language learning disorders, dyslexia. And again, it's across the whole lifespan. So this is a very broad category. It's stroke, dementia, autism, Down syndrome, language learning disorders. And then we go into pragmatic disorders, or social communication would fall under that. Being able to interpret, adapt, understand social communication. And then the last area I would say is swallowing, or throat weakness. So that's deciding. So I work quite closely with dietitians sometimes, trying to find the right diet for patients, because maybe they can only drink thickened liquids or eat softened foods, you know. So in a nutshell, but it's very, very broad. And I mean, I think any of these areas I could probably talk to you all for another 3 hours about, but I won't, because you all might get bored. So.
Wow. I did not know it was that broad. I'm blown away. And, you know, I wouldn't mind you speaking for 3 hours, but we don't have that kind of time.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
Yeah, but it's really interesting. Everything you said there is like every sentence is like a new learning experience for me, because I really didn't know it was that involved. And I mean, with that kind of workload, you would need some breathing techniques. Yeah.
And actually, you know, I take a lot of inspiration from yoga, because I do work a lot with people on breathing. That affects voice. It affects volume. It affects your ability to eat and drink. Like, so I've done a lot of yoga in my life as well. And I teach some of my patients how to breathe. Sounds so like, oh, what do you mean? Everybody knows how to breathe. But do we really know how to breathe all the way into our lungs, not just in, you know, clavicular breathing, you know? And it not only helps with that fight or flight, Vera, like what Vera was talking about, that parasympathetic nervous system, but it is essential for our voice. It is essential for the proper functioning of our throat muscles. Like it's that twine that's all interconnected.
Wow. Really and truly, it would really do us good if somebody of your expertise or persons of your expertise would have more, you know, exposure, because the information you're giving here is really priceless. I don't know if the viewers really realize, you know, the level of importance, but it's the kind of information that could make massive differences in lives, right? And, you know, we could speak about mental health, but just in general, we always want to live better lives. We always want to be happy, and we will always be encountering situations and challenges, whether it be from our physical bodies or from the mental side, or it might be interacting with somebody who you work with as an attorney. I'm imagining that your mental health is one of the most important things that you would need on your job, eh?
Me, yes. Yeah, I mean, yes. I thought you were talking to Vera as an attorney, because I mean, I think any of us could say yes to that, you know. I know a lot of speech therapists, or a lot of people in associated medical fields experience a lot of burnout. And that's a factor that we have to come to terms with and set our own boundaries around, you know?
Yeah, definitely. And I was actually directing it to Vera, but I'm glad you added that, because I keep taking notes every time you all talk. And as I said, there's so much information. You keep giving these really intriguing, important contributions that I think we can't do without at least mentioning, even if not exploring, right?
Yeah.
So thank you for that. And Vera, could you give us some insight into, say, as an attorney, you know, there would be, I've never been in a court law.
Oh, it's so stressful.
Challenges and difficulties, but could you, I imagine, maybe it's a lot of television, but could you, give us some insight in terms of, do you even use breathing like during cases?
Before, yes. I probably, before I started even recognizing that I was breathing incorrectly, because when I was first told, well, shallow breathing into the chest is really not the correct way to breathe, and I'm like, what? But that's how I've been breathing all my life, and I think that's how we're all breathing right now, very, very unconscious and unaware. It's just something that happens very naturally, and especially when you become anxious or nervous, like before an interview or before a meeting, or in my case before court, you're in a highly stressed, a high stress environment. I guess with any workplace, not just being an attorney, and of course it begins to affect the way that we breathe, and which then has an effect in our body, because then we sort of constrict and hold tightness, as Fado was saying, in all different parts of the body. And as we begin to deepen the breath, that allows us to create so much more freedom within the body. And I think most people don't understand that, because I didn't understand for a very long time, that the importance of breathing deeply into the deep belly breathing, diaphragmatic breathing, which is a very important practice in terms of, there are several breathing practices which we apply in yoga, but that to me, deep breathing, the deep belly breathing is one which I practice on a daily basis, which I practice in every one of my classes. I encourage my students to breathe deeply, open their belly to breathe, because what it does is it really allows you to expand your lungs. It increases the oxygen flow into the body. And most importantly, it really works on sending signals to the brain to calm your mind down. So it's more than just on a physical level in terms of, expanding the lungs and strengthening the respiratory system. But most importantly, it begins to soothe your nervous system and really has an amazing effect, even if it's practiced for 1 minute. It's uncomfortable at first because it's definitely not how you're accustomed breathing. So when I first started belly breathing, I was like, what is this? Why is my chest not moving? Why is my belly moving? What is this? But now it's just like, it's because I've practiced it so much, like I can't live without it.
While you were speaking here, because, for everyone it may be different, but while doing these shows, even the speakers may have some level of nervousness,
right,
or anxiety. And Fadwa, and while Vera is speaking, I'm like, I'm actually and so that's the awareness that you were referring to. So
yes.
It's already helping. So already you had an impact, right? That's excellent. And I know, Fadwa, you also practice your yoga yourself, right? So I know you would have some level of understanding of that, dealing with the nervousness, dealing with high stress, And when I think high stress, I also think of high stress eating. Immediately, that just jumped into my head. So, as a dietitian, when it comes to mental health, how do you link, or how do you say, identify when there's a situation, or how do you help someone identify, this may be eating due to stress, high stress situations. You can't stand somebody at work, I almost say a boss, but I don't want to discriminate against bosses. So please, could you give us some insight into that?
Yes. A lot of us are emotional eaters. So we in a situation and we find something stressful, we immediately grab for the comfort food, and sometimes the comfort foods are not the most healthiest of foods. You know, I had a client, she told me she was really stressed out. She came, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I went off the diet. I really needed to have this McDonald's because I was highly stressed. Because it would some of these processed foods have chemicals that would mimic dopamine and give you that kind of happy feeling when you eat it, because it interacts, the gut interacts with the brain. So when we eat this food and we feeling nice and happy, the next day, next couple of days, next couple of weeks, our bodies now repay that favor that you did to your body in the form of some other disorder that may have been aggravated. Little do people know that inflammation also adds to, mental health issues, because I have experience with my condition where I would have had a flare-up and immediately my speech becomes slurred because I am so inflamed that, you're tired, you're painful, and that affects your speech. And I remember telling somebody, am I sounding like my words are dragging? Because, I'm feeling like I'm in slow motion currently. And inflammation affects every single aspect of your body once it gets in there. And there are certain foods that can allow your body to, increase the oxygenation of each of these organs. In my practice, I incorporate a holistic approach to, managing disorders or diseases and these kind of things. So I as well encourage my clients to deep breathe. It helps with pain management. It helps with inflammation management, because, you get that oxygen into the cell and kind of picture the air moving into the areas that are painful, along with adenine, foods that help with inflammation, anti-inflammatory foods. I have even encouraged people to do what you call grounding. So now I'm telling people, take off your shoes, go outside in a patch of grass, and stand up there for about 15 minutes and breathe from your belly. The ions that are released from the earth, especially early in the morning, go straight through the soles of your feet and energizes the entire body. Because long time we used to walk without shoes back in the days of cavemen and didn't have shoes. And we were once, intimate with the earth, gardening and these kind of things. And we were strong, we were healthy, our mental health was at the best. So all these other things we can add, and we have to recognize that the things that we feed our bodies, the trans fats from the fried foods, the excess salt from the salty foods, all these things ends up adding more and more inflammation to the body. It damages organs, and this in turn, when we are in pain, we hold our breath. We really hold our breath, and this affects our mental health, anxiety, depression, and there are foods that can help with these things, but you have to work along with the other practitioners, know which medication they are on, know which protocols to put them on. If you have to recommend them to a yoga practitioner, somebody who, is skilled at guiding them. Guided meditation helps to calm, as Vera said, the monkey mind, to calm that mind, because sometimes when we are anxious or depressed, again, as Robin said, our speech changes. We are not able to be fluid and communicate our needs effectively because of all of the high stressful situation that we find ourselves in.
Wow. Yes. Yes, to everything you said there. And I mean, you closed on one of the critical points that I really was going to get to. You spoke about depression, right? And that is, I guess, another one of those topics that is widely perhaps misunderstood or underplayed in our society. We have a culture, we tend to say, oh, he just quiet, he don't want to tell nobody nothing, or yeah, he mad, me no wrong with he, look how he behaving, and there's a lack of true understanding or ability to perceive from another person's perspective, what they may be going through. So I guess when you look at it from a dietary point of view, it's extremely critical to see how much what you consume affects what goes on between the ears, what goes on in the brain, as you refer to the gut-brain axis, you know?
Yeah, it definitely does, because if we really look at our youth, and we have to look at them because they are the future. If we look at what they are engaging in, because they are very encouraged by what they see on social media, we want things quick, and if we're hungry, we just want to grab something and go, not understanding how much it's diminishing our gut health. If we add things like, because our youth don't like to eat vegetables, you tell them about vegetables. You ask any young person, you want some fresh salad with that? No, I don't eat them thing. I know I don't want the bush. Less bush, more meat. But the reality is, I mean, I'm not against having animal protein, but we are a culture that have the majority of the plate. Half of the plate is animal protein or a mixed meat something, but not understanding that these very animals are pumped with hormones that will affect your mental health, that affects your hormonal balance, which affects the gut, which affects your mental health. So sometimes you're walking around anxious and depressed and not recognizing that let's just change the way we do things. Let's change the way we eat. Instead of having that doubles or aloo pie, let's have, a whole grain sandwich with some lettuce in there, and, some salmon, which has omega-3 fatty acids, which are good for your mental health, good for your hormones, good for your gut. Let's have some yogurt, some probiotic foods that making the gut microbiome jump up in your belly, happy, because they're getting something of note that will, again, help with your mental health. And we have to look at the medication, see what the drug nutrient interaction is with the medication that they may be on for their mental health disorder, because that as well, when you're depleting, some medication depletes your body from micronutrients, and you have to replace it in order for the medication to work or for the brain to be balanced.
Wow. And the one thing that kept repeating itself in my mind as you spoke there, because you mentioned it before, but as you started to correlate all the other things, is inflammation, right? And I'm sure Vera and Robin would agree that inflammation affects, within any specific area, affects persons who we deal with in a massive way. And for us to really treat with any, whether it be using breathing or using diet or using therapeutic techniques, we have to understand that inflammation via, whether it be something hereditary or genetic, or whether it be from weak nervous system practices, sympathetic versus parasympathetic, or whether it be the diets that we employ, the thoughts that we generate in our heads really does have a massive influence on our lives, right? So I guess if you're looking at inflammation, you have to look at it from an all-around perspective. So everybody here has an equal say, so to speak, because I would have read, Robin, I don't know if you would have much insight on this, because I am not an expert in the arena, right? But they say the fulcrum of all disease begins with inflammation. And when I say disease, I'm referring to any mental health differentiability like that. So even with regards to the stuff you do in your speech pathology practice.
I don't know. I would defer to Fadwa on that. That's not an area that I feel super confident talking about. However, our brain burns the most calories in our body. To be able to think, to be able to concentrate, to be able to pay attention, to be able to learn requires food. It requires us to be fed. So while Fado was talking, what kept spinning around in my head was teachers and, you know, thinking about the awareness, again, not teachers are aware of this. Teachers can probably speak more to it than even I can. But the kids that are coming to school that haven't had breakfast or that are drinking a soft drink for lunch and that's all they have, they are experiencing these peaks and crashes from the sugar. The hunger is causing a lack of attention, which kids can't concentrate with that. So that's where I would probably get called, you know. And again, it just reiterates that idea that everything is connected. I have kids as well. So that's one of the first questions that I ask when I'm doing my initial intake with families. What's a child's diet like? What are they eating? When do they eat? You know, food and sleep are essential. Yeah. The other aspect related to food or the diet is I have kids that come to me with a lot of sensory processing challenges and they don't eat a wide range of food, you know. So again, that is an area that needs to be managed. It needs to be talked about, because how can a teacher teach? How can a teacher encourage a child to learn new things, do well at school when their belly is rumbling?
Right.
You know, there has to be a marrying of those ideas.
Indeed. I agree with you 100%. And so I guess I would always go back to the fact that educating the public is really important, you know. So it may not be this specific webinar. We want this webinar to be able to inform those who are here paying attention and could carry some information. And maybe, you know, people fond of doing their Google searches, which I would always recommend to do with caution, you know, but I would still endorse it. Try as best as possible, get information. You know, if you want to contact experts, we have a dietitian, we have a speech pathologist, we have a yogi, the yogi within, Vera, you know. So it's really important once we're trying to embrace, and I think, Vera, I would ask you to explain this. There are persons who may not really consider the importance of mental health. And with your background and your accomplishments, could you give some insight to those in the audience to help them understand, you know, from your perspective or from your experiences, how mental health is a major part of everything you do?
Yeah, sure. I think what I can say is that I think in most instances, what we tend to focus a lot on and place emphasis on is more of physical illnesses and ailments. And similarly in yoga, we place a lot of emphasis on the physical body and poses and all of that, and we tend to neglect the workings and the operations of the mind. At least from my experience, I can say that I spent a long time basically focusing on just the physical and ensuring that my body is cared for and my legs are strong enough to replace my arms. And there was really no emphasis in observing the quality of my mental health and the way that my mind works, and in fact the way that my mind and the effect my mind has on my body. I think there is a lot of stigma attached, and even for me, the first time I considered, and I would speak from my own personal experience, considered, you know, seeing a therapist because I felt like I had symptoms of anxiety or depression. There was a bit of apprehension in terms of sharing that with anyone, because I felt like, you know, people may not quite understand or might, you know, there might be judgment on the part of others in terms of seeking help, like seeking help in terms of talk therapy and that type of thing. But I think it's important that we understand that I believe personally that most people walk around with some form of mental illness in some way or the other. We exist, and I know for myself that I would have existed completely in my mind for a very long time, where I began believing that, the voice in my head was me, or the voice that says I'm not good enough, or I'm somebody without arms, or there's someone who might be better than I am, or anything that the voice, or I'm a failure, or anything that your voice in your head tells you, you tend to believe that this is who you are. And I think with the right amount of awareness in terms of how your mind works and using your mind as a tool to create benefits, not just for your overall well-being, but in terms of your general joy and happiness and peace and and that type of thing. I think creating the awareness and beginning to observe my mind in terms of how it works and how it affects my general well-being was really critical for me. And that is what I think we need to be a little more, create more openness, I guess. And I guess, webinars like this where we talk very openly about mental health, and just from my personal experience, I have no problem sharing that, because I believe that the stigma that we have attached to mental health should be eliminated entirely, because I think we all suffer from it, as I said. And it's really a matter of now treating the mind just as equally important as we treat our body, and helping others also to be more open and become more aware of how their own mental health and their mental stability is important.
Of course. And what you said there, Ram, because, some people might look at it as, well, this person's mental health is their responsibility. But I would also add that the mental health of the person next to me could impact me. How many of us would have gone into a random store, I wouldn't call any names, and dealt with someone who you've greeted them, lovely, wonderful, hi, great day, and their response really due to their state of mind.
Of course, because because you perceive the world and you engage in the world based on what's happening internally within your internal. But what's happening internally within you is how you will perceive the world, how you would greet the world. So if your mind is chaotic, or if your mind is negative, or if your general well-being internally is in a state of chaos, then that's how you greet the world. So many of us walk around, we project what's happening internally within us that has absolutely nothing to do with the person that we are actually greeting. And it's only when you're aware of your own internal state, then you're able to say, well, you know what, you won't take stuff personally, and you don't allow it to really affect your personal well-being.
Wow. That is really kind of key in this entire thing, because a lot of people will say, okay, we're talking about mental health, but how is it applicable to daily life? Maybe they might say, I'm not an attorney like Vera, I'm not a speech pathologist, I'm not a dietitian, but the truth is about it, in daily life, dealing with family members, with bosses in the workplace, with co-workers, with children, dealing with your children or with any children, your mental health has a massive impact on those around you, particularly children. Robin, you sound like you want to chirp in on that.
No. I mean, yeah, I agree 100% with this whole conversation. I think, it's so like, but when we were talking before, when we were planning for this, I brought up therapy works is my business, and we have a motto here that says kids do well if they can. Not if they want to, not if they choose to, not if they, it's if they can, they will do well. And I think that's how I try to move through life as well, where people are doing the best they can. So you meet them with that kindness, you meet them with that compassion, you're going to leave a mark on them that's hopefully going to transfer to the next person that they interact with, that's going to transfer to the next person. We can't solve mental health challenges just by being kind. I mean, I think it's a very real, easy to do, turn your computer off and take that out into the world. Anxiety and depression are real things though, and just need to be, a professional needs to be talked to or brought in about that. As for kids, I don't know, sometimes you just need a, sometimes you just need to walk away from it too. Like you need to realize that if they're driving you crazy, it's probably just what Vera was saying, less about them, more about you. You've had a stressful day at work, you coming home, you have a presentation to plan for the next day, you have dinner to make, you have lunch kits to pack, and you have a little one not wanting to brush their teeth or something. It's that can be just so challenging, especially if, you've had to sit in traffic for 2 hours to get home. You forget what daylight looks like because you're going from an office to a car to, but sometimes the best thing to do is just walk away, take a breath, realize that it's not about them, it's about you. You are the one that you're the adult, you're the one that needs to get yourself back together, calm yourself down, do some of the deep breathing that we talked about, and then come back to deal with them. Again, I'm on the other side of a computer, so it sounds very easy for me to say this.
Right.
I also think an important thing for parents to remember is ask for help. If you need help, reach out and ask for help. There might be a neighbor that could drop off a macaroni pie, or, it takes a village to raise children. And that idea of community that I started with first talking about is essential, I think.
Wow. Yes, absolutely. And on this topic of children, I really want to revisit this topic as soon as we just take a break to thank the sponsors. But just before we go to speak about the sponsors, I just want to say, Fadwa, I want to address that because I know you would have a lot on this topic once we're dealing with mental health and the connection between food and how we treat with children, right? So we'll get to that. But I need to say this. The last show we did, we had the first the sponsorship of Green on the Go for raw natural juices. They also do vegetable smoothies, right? This is the logo right here for those who could see it. And Green on the Go to me is kind of amazing. Yeah? As we're speaking about mental health, we had it for the last topic on nutrition, but Green on the Go offers a lot of healthy beverages, and I know that a lot of these products are critical in developing the mind of not only children and young people, but anyone in general, because you have pineapple and ginger, you have kale and apple, they have different flavors. And you have the contacts there for anybody willing to try it. I suggest not only is it healthy, if you have let me say you have a endometriosis or some kind of inflammatory issue or disease, right? And you drink the ginger or you drink the kale and apple, would you believe it that pain flare-up would be reduced significantly? This is something I experienced personally, dealing with a serious work injury. And sometimes even while doing this webinar, I may be having, a little pain. And for the last webinar, Father, this is a true story. When I drank the ginger, I got a lot of energy and the pain totally dissipated. This is factual. Yes. So I would really encourage, especially parents, not only to try it, but it's good for kids too. Give them how much, they might enjoy it if you train them into enjoying it. But it really does taste good because the ginger one with pineapple and ginger, it's sweet because of the pineapples, So having taken that time to acknowledge Green on the Go, I really think outside of sponsorship, this is my personal opinion, I think it's an excellent initiative. I think more places should be encouraged to do this because they do it online and they basically deliver to anywhere in Trinidad. So feel free, take the number, call, and if not try them, learn, online. They have the little apple and kale vegetable juices and fruit juices. Try it, you will see the impact of these things. Right? So getting back to the mental health now and to the effect, and I will call out one word, Fadwa. I would use one word and you'll be able to go up. Sugar.
I was actually thinking about that word just now, honestly, because I mean, sugar is not the big bad wolf in the room, right? It is a bad wolf, but not the biggest of the baddest of them, right? Because if you look at mental health and inflammation, sugar right there, underneath these sort of fats and the oils and all these other kind of things. When it comes to young people and sugar, the sugar rush that they get when they have all these excess refined sugar and you have to calm them down. I mean, I used to tutor and I remembered I had a child that came into the school. This child would have one Coca-Cola every single day before she comes to class. A Coca-Cola every day. Sometimes she has like 5 for the day because back then the cafe is selling whatever they want.
Yeah.
I had to make a deal with the child because we couldn't get her to stop bouncing around the room long enough to sit down and focus. So we had to get her to calm down and strike a deal. Okay, the deal is if you do X amount of work, you could only have one of this before you come here. If you come here and you have more than one, you can't do anything today. We're going to practice some calming exercises because you need to calm down in order to focus. And, when we look at the school system and the snacks that they sell in the cafeterias, I mean, now they're trying to do better and kind of mandate the cafeterias with exactly what they should be feeding the children, during that time, but you can't keep an eye on every single cafe. It would be nice if our teachers could be, taught how to use breathing techniques, especially after lunch, before lunch, when a child having a tantrum, when teenagers trying to play mad with the teacher, how to get them to calm down, using a deep breathing technique during class time, because that opens up the mind along with the diet. If the diet is good, your breathing is good, then you're able to focus and concentrate. And when I think about diseases, sugar impacts a lot of these things. I mean, I had instances where of recent, I recognized that I had a knee pain. It goes along with the territory with the disorder that I have. So I decided to say, well, what is going on here is because I had a slice of birthday cake, which had lots of frosting. I tried to take off the frosting as much as possible. And I decided, let me go out on a limb and have some ice cream to go with that. Oof. Little did I know, for a whole week, 2 weeks after that, I am in pain, wondering, if I reach the age, what's going on with my knees. Then you have some swelling. And, you had to call for help because you can't get off the chair, all these kind of things. And then, you had to go back and recognize, well, wait, is the sugar? So my body can no longer process the sugar as it could. So imagine what's happening in the young person's body with the excess sugar that we like to eat. We have refined, now people deciding that they want to have substitute sugars, these stevias and erythritol and all these different kind of things. These things do other things to your body as well. So I would suggest that you use natural sugars from fruits. Right. Fruit has enough sugar. There's no need to add extra. You can use dates as a form of a sweetener, raisins. There's even coconut sugar, or just use less. Some people like extremely sweet juices. This will cause inflammation, which will then flare up everything, and they can't focus because they're in so much pain, or, inflammation also affects the brain. As I mentioned before, I was inflamed at one point in time, and I couldn't string my words together clearly to form a sentence because of the amount of inflammation I had, going through my body. And when it comes to disorders and diagnoses, we have to look at how people react when they are diagnosed with some disorder or disease. Because as a whole mental health, you have to now get accustomed. You have to now digest, okay, this is what I have. So there, deep breathing would come in, as, Vera is the expert here, because she as well had to deal with, her area, her physical, I don't want to call it a disability, a physical challenge. I would call it a gift, because, now she's able to use her entire body now. She's, moving as one. She's one in her movement because of the use of her yoga practice and the acceptance, of where she is, and I look up to her. She's a really good example. I've been looking at her since, since she left school, that, she has been, to the forefront, and then look at her, the way she persevered and these kind of things. But that going back to the issue of dealing with a diagnosis, stress causes more inflammation. It deals with the mind, or you look at yourself differently. So how do we deal with that? How do we deal with, that whole area of managing a diagnosis from a breathing standpoint?
Wow. And there's really so much to really cover if we try to address every aspect of what you just said there, because so many things came up. You made me think about, the exercise, and I will go back to Vera on this part of it, because we know yoga is mainly the breathing, but there's physical movement attached to it, and this physical movement does have an impact on mental health, on the brain, on the mind. So Vera, could you just explore that a little bit?
In terms of the physical movement?
Yeah. In terms of how the physical movement in yoga impacts or improves the mental health side, whether it be through the circulation. So, you have your oxygenation with breathing, but the physical movement itself as well.
Right. So what I'll say in terms of physical movement, so there are a lot of postures, of course, where you fold forward. So it basically brings your heart above your head. Right. So as you fold forward, of course, your heart goes above your head, right? What happens at that point is that it allows for fresh oxygenated blood to flow to your brain. Now, what this does is, of course, it has an effect on your mental state. It has an effect on your brain. It also has an effect on your cognitive skills, in that it improves your memory, your focus, your concentration. So it brings a lot of clarity and peace to your mind, and it also, of course, it relieves a lot of anxiety and stress that we have stored in the brain. Now, just like you, in moving your body, you begin to strengthen your muscles. But similarly, you also strengthen your heart, because your heart is a muscle as well, right? So you begin to slow down your heart rate. So it brings a sense of calmness to your entire being. So once your heart muscles begin to strengthen, it becomes more efficient, of course. So it's able to pump blood faster throughout the body. So there's less heartbeats per minute, right? I'm not a doctor, but I'm just saying this on generally what we learn in yoga teacher training. But it really helps in terms of the physical aspect, in terms of slowing down the heart rate, and which of course helps generally in terms of calming your entire body and bringing you to a state of relaxation. So in terms of the actual movement of your body, what I would also say is that, remember, we hold a lot of tension in different areas in our body. We also hold a lot of trauma that we would have experienced, whether from childhood or throughout our lives. We carry this trauma with us, and we hold it in different areas. For example, our hips, or our gut, as we spoke about previously, or the shoulders or the neck, or any area in the body. But there tend to be certain areas that we hold a lot of tension, we hold a lot of trauma, we hold a lot of pain, a lot of stuck emotions, a lot of negative emotions that we're not even aware of. We may be holding a lot of tightness in our hip region, and whatever it is tension, or it could be maybe holding trauma there, we're holding negative emotions, stuck emotions. And when you practice yoga, for example, like opening, like a lot of hip openers, a lot of heart openers, a lot of neck rotations, what you do is you begin to open up these areas of the body, and you release a lot of tension, a lot of stress, a lot of trauma, a lot of stuck emotions, and you create so much more freedom in your body. So you think you're becoming flexible in terms of your muscles, but on a very subtle, deeper spiritual level, you are also creating so much freedom and so much spaciousness in your body for there to be a free flow of energy, for there to be a free flow of oxygen, of breath, of prana, which is basically your life force, so that you now begin not walking around as a constricted, tight, tense, traumatic person, but someone who is able to walk around a lot more freer, a lot lighter, which of course has such an amazing and beautiful impact on how you show up in the world, in terms of your spirit and how you treat with your environment and your workplace, and just having your general human experience would be way more joyful, and you create so much more freedom within yourself through just the movement of your body and directing your breath to certain parts of your body based on the posture that you engage in.
Wow. So, brilliant. I don't have any more questions with respect to that. You gave me everything. I hope everybody got that. So now I see some questions here, and Vera, I'll come back to you because you mentioned it in the earliest part of this webinar about the monkey mind, and I know Fadwa would have repeated it. Someone asked, what is the monkey mind? Could you give them a nice brief thorough answer like you did just now?
All right. Okay. So what I would say in terms of what the monkey mind is, based on my understanding and my own experience, is that very similar to how a monkey operates, I guess, just like jumping around, or like from branch to branch or tree, just jumping around anyway. When we observe our mind, we tend to realize like there are a lot of thoughts in the mind at one specific moment. So it's just like there's a lot of thoughts jumping around all over, thousands of thoughts within the day. And of course, what I think it's important that we understand is that our thoughts have power, and our thoughts, it's energy. And what it does is the more thoughts that we have in the mind, and the more the thoughts are negative and chaotic, it sends a negative signal throughout our entire body. So most times when I speak of the monkey mind, I just mean a mind that is chaotic, or just jumping from one thought to another in every second, and not having that sense of calmness and stability. I think we won't realize that the mind is operating like a monkey unless we have awareness, unless we begin to witness our mind. So we really have to practice separating ourselves from our mind, recognizing that we are not the mind, we are not the thoughts that flow through the mind, but we are something that is way, way deeper than our mind, or the voice that's in our head. And when we begin to observe the mind, which I have been practicing, you really realize how much you can take that power away from your mind. So you now become that power that can control, and you're no longer a slave to this, this monkey mind. So
Wow. Heavy hitters. That's powerful words. Those are powerful words. I'll go to the next question. I see here someone is asking, is there, I believe this may be Robin's territory, is there somewhere we can reach out to persons with disabilities that may be having mental health issues? They probably, I don't know if they phrased everything correctly, but you could probably give some insight into what they're trying to get to.
So there are a number of different associations. So there is like an autism association, there's a cerebral palsy association, Down syndrome association. So if you have a loved one that you are concerned may fall under one of those categories, you can reach out to one of those associations. These schools, primary schools right now, and actually secondary schools, are doing a pretty good job. I know the social workers in the public systems are overwhelmed, but they are doing an excellent job. They are around, so you can talk to your kid's teacher, talk to your principal about the possibility of getting assistance, getting help like that. Yeah, I think, what I was, a point I just wanted to make while I was listening to Vera and Fadwa talking, is that I think something that helps calm the stress and anxiety that especially comes around maybe a new diagnosis, whether it's for yourself endometriosis, for example, or it's for your child, or it's for somebody else in your family, some other loved one, is making a plan, you know. So going to your health center, reaching out to your doctors, your pediatricians, etc., to help you make a plan. And then not expecting the plan to be enacted overnight, one step at a time, you know. I think that is very, very useful. Life is stressful. You know, we can sit here and we can talk about it. It is stressful. We are in the middle of a pandemic that feels never ending. People have lost their jobs. People have lost loved ones. Kids have been out of school. Everything is turned on its head, you know. So for me, really trying to just take one day at a time, make sure that you're putting one foot in front of the other. You don't have to move fast. You just need to move, you know, can be useful, you know.
Yeah, definitely. I agree.
So there are resources. If you go online, there are resources, there are associations, there are, you know, people that can be reached out to.
Wonderful, wonderful. Just takes a little bit of reaching out, as you said. And I really want to hold on to that last point you made there about life is stressful. You know, I would actually modify it to life can be stressful, right? Because I also think that sometimes, you know, we could alter the way we perceive things, even though there's a certain level of challenge involved and there's a certain level of difficulty or the physiological stress involved, you know. But you know, in the middle of a pandemic, which is a point I was wondering if we should delve into that, because we're close to the end of our time. But really, if we want to look at the pandemic, Robin, I would ask you, could you recall or could you state if there were any clients who would have had any, let's say, revisitations of a stressful condition, or any issues that was or seemed to be directly impacted by this current climate?
I mean, I think everybody has been touched by it, you know, I think everybody has been touched by it. So, I mean, I'm not going to go into any specific stories, but generally the one that I see the most is the kids being home from school and not getting that social interaction, that social connection. That's been really hard and very detrimental to definitely the kids that I work with. But when I talk to parents about siblings and cousins, and you know, it's been really, really hard. So yeah, I guess that's how I would answer that. I mean,
yeah, well, you see, the story is more or less untold. That's why I'll say your take on that without giving away too much in terms of the confidential or the confidentiality between you and your clients. But you know, it's something that I'm sure people may be wondering, well, this is something we have to deal with. Life can be stressful, right? How can we treat with it? So, you know, then I would go to Vera. I would say, is there any tips or breathing techniques over a short time span that you could really pass on to the viewers that could really help them, you know, even if it's meditate or focus or calm down in any given situation? Nowadays it's difficult to really find a minute of composure unless you really make yourself aware. So do you have any tips for the viewers?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course. I think what I've advised all my clients, like when the studio closed during the pandemic and all of that, you know, meditation, breathing practice, yoga generally is something you can practice at any point because you have like the most amazing tool at your disposal at any point in time, which is your breath, which you don't need to be in a studio or any given place to use to your full advantage. So I think what we spoke about before would be an important practice, which can be practiced literally anywhere, which is a deep belly breathing, by simply placing your palms on your abdomen and breathing through the nostrils. Or we actually going to practice, or you actually
Try immediately.
Okay, yeah, so just placing the palms on the abdomen, taking a deep breath in through the nostrils, expanding your belly to breathe as opposed to your chest, and exhaling again through your nostrils and releasing or collapsing your abdomen. I think it's important that you bring awareness to your breath and to your abdominal muscles, and just simply notice how your abdomen pushes against your palms as you inhale and collapses as you exhale. And keep the breath slow and steady. At some point, of course, we know the mind will begin to wander as it does, because the mind will continue to do what it does. But it's important that once your mind begins to wander, you very gently bring your awareness back to your breath. So once you keep your awareness on the breath, you are in the present moment where absolutely nothing else matters in that moment but you, your breath, and your body. After maybe practicing for a minute or two, if it's your first time, I would suggest a short time, because it could be a bit effortful and uncomfortable. But with practice, definitely you'll be able to reap so many benefits in terms of calming your mind and bringing so much stability and clarity to your entire being.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
I actually felt a difference there, but I'm also accustomed to doing deep breathing at intervals.
Okay, good. Yeah.
I think that I would have been a little accustomed, so I wouldn't have felt any level of discomfort, like say somebody doing it for the first time. But it does feel, taking 15 seconds. I mean, I know
Yes.
But taking that 15 seconds or however long that was to really breathe, feel the rib cage moving.
Correct. Yes.
I really felt a difference. I'd encourage people, no matter how silly you may feel, your children might be mocking you, whatever, do it. It will grow on you and it will really help, And to close us off today, Fadwa, previously we discussed in the first webinar the physical side of health in the Caribbean, and then we dealt with nutrition. Now we're dealing with mental health. Do you want to close it off by tying in all three and saying, because we really see with the yoga, the speech pathology, and the dietary adjustments, how much everything is really intertwined. So could you close us off by touching on that?
Yes. What I would like to say is that to treat any disorder or disease, we have to look at the root cause. There's a root cause for something that results in something else. So the more we delve into that, into what's actually causing it, then we could pull everything together and let it work as a working model, because it's a holistic approach. Gone are the days when we used to just focus on, allopathic medicine, just a pill or some drug or something like that. Now we have to look at the person holistically as a whole being to see how each one of these things, when we institute each one of these different protocols, how they can begin now to shape, a better, healthier, all-around person. We had fitness. Fitness is important. Breathing is important in fitness. Nutrition is important in fitness. Nutrition is important in breathing as well. With inflammation, you have to be able to nourish the body in order to be able to function, for your lungs to function well, and for your mental health, in order to be thinking well, speaking well. You need to nourish your body for all of these things, to cater for all of these disorders. So everything is holistic. Think of it as a tree. Because branches are what you get.
Okay, wonderful. And because that was so brief, we still have a few minutes. So I just want to address a few questions that we didn't really get to address in that very healthy discussion, pun intended. This one goes out to dietitian Fadwa. Do you find that the Caribbean diet allows for a healthy mental health status? So I guess they're referring to the typical Caribbean diet.
If we're looking at the foods that we have available to us within the Caribbean, we have an abundance of ground provisions, we have abundance of fruits, vegetables. If we stick to that kind of diet, the organic type of diet, yes, it will help with our mental health. But because we have moved away from eating those kind of things, and we have now moved into having a lot of processed foods, it is not doing well for our mental health. It's destroying our gut microbiome because we're not doing anything else to feed it. How many of us have able to have yogurt on a daily basis, or even, things like pickles and sauerkraut, these kind of fermented foods? We eat certain things and it destroys the microbiome. So I believe that we are very capable, the Caribbean, because we have all the foods from the 6 food groups. Once we stick to them and we leave out the processed foods, yes, it will be doing very well for our mental health.
Excellently stated. That's absolutely true. The other question I'm seeing here, I don't know how much, because it seems complex, but I don't know if Robin, I don't know how brief you could give us this answer. The question is, what mental health issues are commonly associated with a speech disorder? I know you may have mentioned it before. And what techniques can persons employ to rectify?
So I'm going to actually kind of copy what Fadwa said, because I agreed with it very much. That idea of going to your roots. So basically, there are no mental health that is specifically related to any speech disorder. So I can't say if you have a stroke, you definitely will have X. A lot of them do co-occur though. Autistic people who have autism may have obsessive compulsive disorder. They may have depression. They may have anxiety.
Right.
In terms of techniques to deal with it, you have to always manage the speech and language, your communication, and then figure out, this is where what Fadwa was saying comes in, figure out what's the root. Yeah. Why is there anxiety? Is there a completely separate diagnosis of anxiety that really has nothing to do with the speech diagnosis? In that case, different things might be needed. If they are co-occurring, maybe if I can make a plan and we see the speech improving, the person's anxiety. So there's no simple answer to that. It definitely is a person by person case. You have to look at the root cause. Where is it coming from? And then make a plan with your patient, make a plan with your family, your kid's family, to work on it.
Yeah, I anticipated that, because we did discuss a lot that I think would have dealt with much of that question, but perhaps they may have missed that specific part. And I see one question here, Vera. Can you teach children yoga? Is there an age limit? That's the question they want to know.
Okay, yeah, definitely you can teach the children. In terms of the physical aspect, I think you would have to be a bit gentle, because, of course, with kids, their bones and muscles are still developing at the age of 6, 7, and so on. So they can practice postures, but just very gently. Definitely in terms of the spiritual or the mental aspect, in terms of the breathing and the meditation, I would 100% recommend that kids be taught meditation, deep breathing, so that, they too can develop over time and into adulthood, how to regulate their emotions and calm their mind and find peace and still, which of course I didn't have the benefit of as a child, but I'm now beginning to reprogram and retrain my brain and my mind. But if it is that you can start at a young age, which I wish I had that opportunity, and which I would definitely recommend for persons who have kids, is, start at a very young age to teach kids how to observe their mind and sit with their emotions and be open and, be free to express themselves in any way. So I'll definitely recommend meditation, deep breathing, and gentle yoga for kids.
Excellent. I feel so privileged to be amongst you guys in this discussion, because a lot of the information here, it really isn't commonplace, And so I have to really sincerely express appreciation because, you know, as I told Robin, every sentence seems to be a new learning experience. I really feel like truly enlightened, and I hope all the viewers feel the very same way. Much appreciation to the entire panel. Your words were thorough. It dealt with all different elements of the issue. I feel like we could probably go on for another hour or two, but that's not the way how this is structured. So what I would say is I'd encourage anybody viewing. We have the last webinar of this health and wellness in the Caribbean Youth Series on the 31st of October 2021. Had to specify, right? Register when the registration links are available, and meet persons as exceptional as Vera, as well trained as Robin, and as thorough and in depth as Fadwa Abdul Ghafoor, because I just love to say that whole name, right? So I really have to thank everybody. I want to thank Caribbean Insight for making this webinar possible. I'd also like to thank our sponsors, Green on the Go. Green on the Go is an amazing organization. I wish everybody here tries it. I think everybody here would like it. And having said all that, the topic of mental health is still one that needs to be, you know, broadcasted, so to speak. And I hope that every one of us took from each other and could take the messages from this into our own lives, so this information could be spread, not like the misinformation on a lot of different topics out there on social media or in the actual recognized media. So thank you, everyone. Thank you, viewers. Without the viewership, I guess we'd be talking to ourselves. So thank you a lot to everyone who's participating by viewing this, and for the questions. Everyone have a wonderful Sunday evening. Have a great week ahead. Take care of your mental health and those of your children. Goodbye.